The first thing my mother said after seeing the grease on my hands wasn't, "Are you okay?" It wasn't even, "How have you been?" She looked me in the eyes and whispered with cold disgust, "I'd rather tell people I have no son than admit mine fixes broken cars." She walked away without looking back. 8 years later, I was standing under the hood of a black sedan with a smoking engine. I had no idea that the woman waiting desperately beside that car was my own mother. And I had absolutely no idea what she was running from. People think engines lie. They don't. People lie. Engines only tell the truth. My name is Ethan Carter, and for 17 years I've been listening to machines because they made more sense than people ever did. Every strange rattle had a reason. Every oil leak had a source. Every broken part could be replaced. I only wished families worked the same way. Growing up in Cedar Falls, Iowa, my mother, Margaret Carter, built her entire identity around appearances. Our house always looked perfect. The grass was trimmed every Saturday. The windows sparkled. She wore expensive dresses even when grocery shopping. She smiled for neighbors. And criticized everyone after they left. Including me. Especially me. "You are going to college," she'd say every morning. "You'll become a lawyer like your grandfather. A respectable man." I usually nodded. Not because I agreed. Because arguing only made dinner quieter. Dad understood me. Thomas Carter repaired tractors on weekends for local farmers. When I was 9, he handed me a rusty wrench. "Here." I looked at him. "I'll mess it up." He smiled. "Then we'll fix what you mess up." That sentence changed my life. While Mom dreamed about courtrooms, Dad and I rebuilt old engines in our garage. The smell of motor oil became my favorite perfume. Saturday mornings meant coffee for Dad. Orange juice for me. And hours of laughing while taking apart engines nobody else believed could ever run again. "Listen carefully," Dad would tell me. "The loudest noise isn't always the biggest problem." I didn't realize then. He wasn't talking about cars. Everything changed the summer I turned 16. Dad collapsed inside the garage. One second he was tightening a bolt. The next, the wrench hit the concrete. I still hear that sound. The ambulance came fast. Not fast enough. A heart attack. 48 years old. Healthy. Gone. The garage became silent. So did our house. Mom didn't cry much. Instead, she became harder. Sharper. As if grief had turned into glass inside her. 1 month after the funeral, she walked into the garage while I was rebuilding Dad's old pickup. She folded her arms. "This ends today." I looked up. "What?" "This hobby." "It's not a hobby. It was your father's mistake." The wrench slipped from my hand. She continued. "You'll focus on school." Dad wanted. She cut me off instantly. "Your father wanted too many things." The words hit harder than any punch. I stood. He loved this place. He wasted his potential. "No." I whispered. "He was happy." She laughed. Actually laughed. Happiness doesn't pay respect. That night, I slept in the garage. Graduation arrived faster than I expected. Everyone kept asking where I was going. Harvard? State University? Engineering? Law school? The answer shocked almost everyone. I enrolled in Midwest Technical Institute. Automotive technology. Full scholarship. When Mom opened the acceptance letter, she stared at it for almost a minute. Then she slowly placed it on the kitchen table. "No." I blinked. "What?" "I forbid it. I'm 18. I am your mother. And this is my life." Her face turned pale. "You would embarrass this family?" I'd rather repair engines than pretend to be someone else. She slapped the table so hard the coffee cup tipped over. You will wear a suit. I'll wear coveralls. You'll disgrace your father's name. No. I looked directly into her eyes. I'll honor it. Silence. Long. Painful silence. Then she said the sentence that followed me for years. If you become a mechanic, don't ever call me mother again. She walked upstairs. An hour later, my suitcase was sitting outside the front door. Locked. Every family photo with me had disappeared from the walls. As if I had never existed. I picked up the suitcase. Looked at the house one last time. And drove away in Dad's old pickup. The engine coughed twice. Then settled into the same steady rumble Dad used to smile at. I whispered through tears. I hope I'm making you proud. The wind carried the words away. But someone else heard them. From behind the living room curtain. My mother stood perfectly still. Watching me leave. She never opened the door. 8 years passed. I built Carter Auto Repair from one rented garage into the busiest repair shop in 3 counties. Customers trusted me because I never sold repairs people didn't need. Life wasn't perfect. But it was honest. Then, on a stormy Thursday evening, a black luxury sedan rolled into my parking lot with smoke pouring from beneath the hood. A woman jumped out, trembling. Her expensive clothes were soaked from the rain. She looked terrified. Ethan. My heart stopped. It was my mother. She looked 10 years older. And before I could say a single word, she grabbed my arm and whispered, "Please, fix the car before they find me." For a long second, I couldn't breathe. The rain hammered against the shop roof. Water dripped from the end of my mother's coat onto the concrete floor. She looked nothing like the woman who had thrown me out. Her perfectly styled hair was soaked. Her hands trembled. Her lipstick had faded. And fear, real fear, filled her eyes. "Ethan," she whispered again. "Please." I looked past her toward the black sedan. The engine was still ticking from the heat. Smoke drifted from under the hood. I swallowed. "You told me never to call you mother." She lowered her eyes. "I know. You erased every picture of me. I know. You told people you didn't have a son." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I know. For years I had imagined this moment. I thought I would feel victorious. Instead, I only felt tired." I grabbed my toolbox. "Pop the hood." She looked surprised. "You're going to help me?" "I'm a mechanic." I pulled the hood release. "I fix broken things." The engine wasn't the only thing in trouble. Someone had driven the sedan far beyond its limits. The radiator hose had burst. Coolant had sprayed everywhere. The serpentine belt had nearly shredded itself. The front bumper carried fresh scratches. And the tires. They had chunks of gravel stuck deep inside the treads. This car hadn't been cruising city streets. It had been driven hard on rough back roads. "Who owns this car?" I asked. She hesitated. "A friend." I looked at her. She couldn't even hold my gaze. "You've never been good at lying." She looked away. "I don't have time to explain." Just then, headlights swept across the shop windows. A black SUV slowed outside. Then drove away. My mother's breathing became shallow. "They're looking for me." "Who?" "I'll explain later." "No." I set the wrench down. "You'll explain now." She opened her mouth. But another voice interrupted. "Ethan?" I turned. My shop assistant, Luis Ramirez, stepped out of the office carrying 2 coffees. He looked from me to my mother. Then back again. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile. Yeah. Luis wasn't convinced. He quietly set the coffees down. If you need me, I'll stay. I nodded gratefully. An hour later the engine was running again. Smooth. Quiet. Reliable. Just like it should. I wiped my hands with a rag. She's ready. My mother didn't move toward the driver's door. Instead, she sank into a chair. I can't leave. I frowned. Why? They'll find me. Silence. Finally she whispered something I never expected. I made a terrible mistake. I crossed my arms. Start talking. She stared at the floor. After your father died, I was drowning in debt. That shocked me. What debt? The house. The medical bills. The loans your father never told us about. I blinked. Dad had loans? She nodded slowly. He refinanced the house twice to keep his repair business alive before he sold it. I felt as though the floor shifted beneath me. Dad had hidden everything. To protect us. I lost almost everything, she continued. I couldn't admit it. So you threw me away? I thought if you became successful, people would stop looking down on us. I laughed bitterly. You thought mechanics weren't successful. I thought appearances mattered. They mattered more than your own son. She couldn't answer. Then another voice came from the doorway. Mrs. Carter? A tall man in a navy suit stepped inside. He smiled politely. My name is Daniel Brooks. My mother turned white. No. He looked at me. I'm sorry to interrupt. Then he looked back at her. You've been avoiding my calls. I stepped between them. Can I help you? Daniel smiled. I doubt it. He held up a folder. Mrs. Carter borrowed $400,000. I stared. What? Her investment company collapsed. My mother covered her face. Daniel continued calmly. She used this vehicle as collateral. This isn't her car, I said. It belongs to our company. He nodded. Correct. So why are you chasing her? Because she disappeared this morning. My mother suddenly stood. I wasn't running. Daniel's smile disappeared. You emptied your safety deposit box. I took what belongs to my husband. You took evidence. The room became silent. Evidence? What evidence? I looked at my mother. What is he talking about? She slowly reached into her purse. Her hand shook violently. From inside she removed an old brown envelope. It looked worn. Like it had been hidden for years. She held it tightly. This is why they're after me. Daniel took one step forward. Mrs. Carter. Give me the envelope. No. Ethan. She looked at me. There are papers inside proving your father's business wasn't failing. I frowned. What? He was cheated. Every muscle in my body tightened. By who? She looked directly at Daniel. His father. The color drained from Daniel's face. My father? He asked quietly. She nodded. Richard Brooks forged contracts. He stole your father's customers. He forced him into debt. I stared at Daniel. He looked genuinely stunned. That's impossible. I believed that too. My mother's voice cracked. Until I found the documents. Daniel slowly shook his head. No. My father died 5 years ago. He took the truth with him. The shop became so quiet that I could hear rain dripping from the roof. Everything I believed about my father. About my childhood. About my mother's choices. Suddenly felt incomplete. Then, a pickup truck screeched into the parking lot. 3 men climbed out. None of them looked friendly. Luis quietly locked the office door. One of the men shouted, "We know she's in there." Daniel turned toward the windows. His face hardened. "I didn't bring them." The leader pounded on the shop door. "Open up." My mother grabbed my wrist. Her voice barely escaped her lips. "Ethan. They're not here for the car. They're here for the envelope." The pounding grew louder. Then, the first window shattered. Glass exploded across the shop floor. Luis instinctively pulled the office door shut. One of the men outside shouted, "Search every room. She can't leave with those papers." My mother clutched the brown envelope against her chest as if it were the last piece of my father she had left. I stepped in front of her. "Nobody touches her." The tallest man forced the front door open. He wasn't carrying a weapon. He didn't need one. His confidence said enough. "Mrs. Carter," he said calmly. "Hand over the envelope, and nobody gets hurt." Daniel Brooks stepped beside me. "I don't know who hired you," he said, "but you're trespassing." The man laughed. "We don't work for you." He looked directly at my mother. "We work for the people who don't want 30-year-old secrets becoming tomorrow's headlines." I whispered to Luis, "Call the police." Luis had already dialed. "They're on the way." The man heard him. "You've got about 5 minutes." He smiled. "That's plenty of time." My mother suddenly stood straighter than I had seen in years. She looked at me. "Ethan." "No. I need to say this." "We'll talk later." "There may not be a later." The room fell silent. She took a shaky breath. "I lied to you for 8 years." Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't throw you out only because you became a mechanic." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I found these papers the same week you left home." She held up the envelope. "They proved your father had been cheated." I wanted to fight. But the people involved had money, lawyers, influence. She looked toward the broken window. "They threatened me." My heart pounded. "They said if I started asking questions, my son might have an accident." I froze. "What?" "They knew where you studied. They knew where you worked. They even described your truck." I couldn't speak. "So I pushed you away." A sob escaped her. "I thought if you hated me, you'd stay away from me." I stared at her in disbelief. "You let me believe you despised me." She nodded through tears. "I thought hatred would keep you alive." For 8 years. I had replayed the day she locked me out. Every cruel word. Every cold glance. Every sleepless night wondering why I wasn't enough. And now, the truth crushed me in an entirely different way. "You should have trusted me," I whispered. "I was trying to protect you. You destroyed us." "I know." She broke down crying. "And I've regretted it every single day." The leader stepped forward impatiently. "Touching reunion." He stretched out his hand. "The envelope." Instead of giving it to him, my mother handed it to me. "Ethan. You finish what your father started." The man lunged. I reacted without thinking. Years of lifting engines had made me stronger than I realized. I blocked him, sending us both crashing into a workbench. Wrenches clattered across the floor. Luis tackled another man. Daniel grabbed the third and wrestled him away from the office. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't heroic. It was messy. Real. Desperate. Outside, police sirens grew louder. The men looked at one another. The leader cursed. "This isn't over." They ran. By the time officers rushed inside, the parking lot was empty except for tire marks disappearing into the rain. 2 weeks later, everything changed. The documents inside the envelope were genuine. bank records, forged contracts, hidden payments, signed statements. They proved that Richard Brooks and several business partners had systematically destroyed honest repair shops, including my father's. Even though Richard had died years earlier, investigators uncovered enough evidence to recover hidden assets and compensate several affected families. One afternoon, Daniel knocked on my office door. He wasn't wearing a suit. Just jeans and a plain blue shirt. "I owe you an apology." "You don't owe me anything. My family's name helped ruin yours." He placed a folder on my desk. The compensation board approved the claim. I opened it. The amount made me blink. It wasn't enough to erase years of pain. But it restored my father's good name. And somehow, that mattered more than the money. A month later, I drove to the old cemetery. Dad's headstone overlooked a quiet hill covered in wildflowers. My mother stood there waiting. She wasn't dressed elegantly anymore. No expensive jewelry. No perfect makeup. Just a simple sweater and tired eyes. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally she whispered, "I visit every Sunday." I nodded. "I know." "You knew?" "I've seen your flowers." She smiled sadly. "I always hoped you'd stop one day. I wasn't ready." "And now?" I looked at Dad's name carved into the stone. "I'm still healing." She nodded. "I understand." She reached into her bag. Not another envelope. Not money. A small rusty wrench. Dad's wrench. The one he had handed me when I was 9 years old. "I found it in the attic." She placed it in my hand. "I should have given this to you years ago." My fingers closed around the worn handle. Memories rushed back. Dad laughing. Grease on our faces. Saturday mornings. Hope. I kept telling myself appearances mattered, my mother whispered. "Your father always said character mattered." A tear slipped down her cheek. He was right. For the first time in 8 years. I stepped forward. Not because everything was forgiven. Not because the pain had disappeared. But because some broken things deserve the chance to be repaired. I hugged her. She cried against my shoulder like she had been holding those tears for years. "I am so proud of you," she whispered. The words I had waited half my life to hear. I looked down at the old wrench in my hand and smiled through tears. "Dad always told me something." She looked up. "What was it?" I glanced toward the sky. "He said, if you break something, don't throw it away before you try to fix it." My mother squeezed my hand. "I wish I'd learned that sooner." As we walked away from the cemetery together, I realized something I had spent years refusing to believe. Some engines can be rebuilt. Some families can too. They just take a lot more patience.